My name is Rachel. I'm 52 years old, and last Christmas was the day everything I believed in crumbled like stale gingerbread under my fingertips. I had just finished setting the last plate on the long dining table. 23 guests. His family always did Christmas in a grand way, with candlelight, crystal glasses, and a silent agreement that love was best shown through presentation. I used to believe in that too, before the paper. The tree glowed behind me. I could smell cinnamon, roasted turkey, and the fresh pine needles we'd picked together 2 weeks earlier. I thought we were happy, or at least surviving. After 27 years of marriage, survival seemed like enough. Rachel, David said, standing by the fireplace, his voice loud enough to quiet the soft hum of carols playing in the background. Everyone turned. His mother paused mid-sip. His sister raised an eyebrow. The twins, my nieces, froze on the floor beside the unopened presents. He held a small red envelope in his hand. I thought it was a Christmas card, maybe even something sentimental, rare as it had become. But when I opened it, I didn't even recognize the first sentence. Rachel Elizabeth Carter, this document serves as formal notice. My vision blurred. I looked up, and I swear I felt the world tilt when I heard it, clapping. It started with his brother, then his sister, his mother, even the twins, clapping like they were at a school play, like it was a show, a joke. I couldn't move. My hand trembled, clutching the letter. My legs felt like paper. My mouth was open, but no sound came out. Then David smiled. He smiled. "I think it's time," he said. I whispered, "Time for what?" He walked closer, lowered his voice, but not so low they couldn't hear. "For you to let go. You've been holding on to something that died a long time ago." Tears welled in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Someone laughed. I think it was his mother. She always said I was too dramatic. "Well, she had to find out eventually," she muttered. That was when I stepped back and dropped the papers to the floor. "You planned this," I said. "You planned this entire thing." No one answered. They just watched, sipped wine, popped chocolate-covered almonds into their mouths. The children had gone back to the presents. One of them ripped open a box and screamed with joy. "A tablet!" I felt like I was watching it all through glass, as if I wasn't really there. "Why today?" I asked. "Why Christmas?" David shrugged. It felt symbolic. New beginnings. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break every glass on that table. Instead, I stood still and repeated, slowly. "I cooked for you. I cleaned your house. I raised your children. I stood by you when your business failed. I buried my parents alone because you were too busy golfing. And you think today is the day for a new beginning?" Something inside me cracked. Not broke, just cracked. Like old porcelain. He didn't flinch. "I'm sorry, Rachel," he said, voice cold. "But this life, it's not for me anymore." "And the cheering?" I asked. "That's just cruelty." His mother said, "You've always played the victim." "It's exhausting." I turned to her. "You are a guest in my home." She laughed. "This isn't your home anymore, dear." Then I walked past them, through the front door, into the snow without a coat. I needed air. I needed silence. I needed God. Standing in the cold, watching my breath cloud in front of me, I whispered, "Lord, what now?" And for the first time in years, I heard something inside me say, "Be still and know that I am God." I walked for what felt like hours that night. The snow kept falling, coating the sidewalks in silence. My breath turned to mist, and my thoughts were a storm of memories and confusion. The lights in the houses glowed with warmth, families laughing, candles flickering, children still awake with sugar in their veins. Christmas joy, just on the other side of every window. But not for me. I ended up at the church 3 blocks away. It was closed, of course, but I sat on the stone steps, my hands tucked under my arms. I had nowhere else to go, not because I didn't have friends. I did. But they were all part of our world, David's and mine. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted to understand. By morning, I had frostbitten fingers and a new fire inside me. I called my sister, Ruth. "I'm coming to stay with you for a few days," I said. She didn't ask why. "The key is under the frog statue. I'll be home by 6. Ruth was 10 years older than me, a retired nurse, widowed, strong, blunt. And unlike David's family, she didn't pretend. When I walked into her small, cozy house later that day, she looked me up and down and handed me a cup of hot tea. "Did he finally do it?" she asked. I nodded. She said nothing, just sat beside me on the couch, her hand resting on mine. "I thought we were doing better," I whispered. She chuckled. "You thought he was coming back. But you've been alone in that marriage for over a decade, Rachel. You just didn't want to admit it." I didn't argue. She was right. His whole family cheered, Ruth. They clapped. That made her sit up. "What?" I told her everything. The red envelope, the silence, the laughter, even the child who cheered for a tablet as I stood in the ruins of my life. She stared at the wall for a long time, then muttered, "May God strike every one of them with a moment of shame so deep it wakes them in the middle of the night." I laughed for the first time since it happened. "Do you remember what Mom used to say?" she added. "Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Let him handle them. You have more important things to do now." Like what? Like rebuilding. That night, we made soup together. She pulled out old photo albums. We talked about our childhood, about my kids, Jacob and Mia, grown now, living in other states. David had made it easier for them to drift away. I remember Jacob calling me 2 weeks ago. "Mom, you okay? You sounded off last time." I had said, "Just tired, honey." You know how the holidays get. Lies we tell our children, thinking we're protecting them. The next day, I went to the bank. I needed to see how much financial damage he'd done behind my back. I had signed papers I didn't understand, trusted too much. My name was on 3 loans I couldn't trace. The woman behind the desk, a kind soul named Lila, leaned in and whispered, "You're not the first woman I've seen walk in here like this, but you can turn this around. It'll take grit and truth." I asked her to print everything, every debt, every account, every transaction. It was worse than I imagined. He had taken out a second mortgage 3 years ago, maxed out 2 of our joint credit cards, transferred investment funds into a private portfolio under his name only. And somehow, in all of this, his family knew. He had been preparing to leave me for years. He just waited for the perfect show. That night, I didn't cry. I listed every expense in a notebook Ruth handed me. I wrote the name of every lawyer in town. I started calling one by one. Only one answered that evening, Sylvia Brenner. She was calm. "Director, I don't do pity, Mrs. Carter. I do justice. You give me honesty, and I'll give you results." I hired her on the spot. "First thing we do," she said, "is freeze whatever assets we can. Next, we investigate fraud. And third, we make sure you don't walk away with just a broken heart and a casserole dish." I liked her immediately. I stayed at Ruth's for a week. Then I rented a small apartment above a bookstore, using my teaching pension as a base. I started substitute teaching again, just part-time. The students were loud, unfiltered, and, weirdly, healing. One afternoon, a girl named Lexi came up to me after class. "You're sad," she said bluntly, "but you smile anyway." I blinked. "How do you know I'm sad?" "Because I do that too." She handed me a crumpled drawing. 2 stick figures. One had brown curly hair like mine. The other held a red envelope. "Burn it," she said, giggling. I smiled. "Thank you. I just might." It was January when the first real blow landed. Sylvia called me on a Wednesday morning. "I need you to brace yourself," she said. "Your husband filed a motion. He's claiming you were mentally unstable and financially irresponsible for the last 5 years." I dropped my coffee mug. The crash echoed through the apartment, but I didn't even look down. "He's what?" "He wants to push you out of the house permanently and keep full control over all shared assets." I sat on the edge of my bed, heart pounding. "He's turning it into a war." "Yes," she said, "but that's his mistake. He thinks you're weak." I wasn't weak. I was wounded. And I had allowed his silence to convince me they were the same thing. I called David. He didn't answer. So I wrote him a letter, not to beg, to remind him. "You may win the house, David. You may even convince a judge that I wasn't enough. But when you sit alone in your glass tower, just know this. Everything you think you've gained, you've traded for something you'll never get back. Peace." I didn't send it. I read it every morning instead, like a prayer. Meanwhile, Sylvia worked fast. She uncovered hidden accounts in his name, loans he took under shell companies, and one more devastating truth. He had been having an affair. Her name was Layla, 34, fitness coach. She had posted a picture on Christmas Day, wearing a sapphire necklace that once belonged to David's grandmother, my daughter's inheritance. It burned, but it also lit a fire in me. "Let's use it," I told Sylvia. And we did. Layla was subpoenaed. So was David's accountant. By March, the court was listening. And so were my children. Jacob called. "Mom, I didn't know. I swear, I believe you. Why didn't you tell us sooner? I didn't want to break your hearts with mine." He cried. "I'm coming home," he said. "I want to help." And he did. He stayed 3 weeks. He helped me pack what little was mine. He spoke in court. He looked his father in the eyes and said, "You didn't just divorce Mom. You walked out on all of us." David said nothing. Mia sent a letter. She didn't want to see him. "I forgive you, Mom, for staying with him so long. I understand now." I carried that note in my purse like a relic. The day of the second hearing, I wore the blue dress Ruth gave me. It was a small thing, but it mattered. David looked tired, thinner, and when he sat down, he didn't smile. His lawyer argued aggressively, tried to paint me as irrational. But every time they twisted something, Sylvia brought out evidence, emails, receipts, voice messages. Piece by piece, his lies unraveled. And then David snapped. He stood in the middle of the courtroom and shouted, "She never loved me like Layla does." Silence. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Carter, please sit down." But he didn't. She made everything about the kids. The house, the church. She stopped being a wife. And I whispered, "You stopped being a man?" He stared at me. For the first time, I saw it. Fear. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. That made me dangerous. The judge adjourned. Outside, Ruth hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You did good, baby sister," she whispered. "You didn't let him bury you." The weeks that followed were quiet, but not the peaceful kind. It was the silence that follows a storm, the kind where you survey the damage and realize some things can't be rebuilt. I started waking up at 4 a.m., unable to sleep. I'd sit by the window with my tea and watch the streetlights flicker off one by one. I thought about the years I gave, the dreams I buried, the woman I used to be. One morning, Ruth joined me, wrapped in her worn brown robe. "You can grieve now," she said, pouring herself coffee. The wars paused. "I don't know how," I whispered. She looked at me and smiled gently. "You just did." The pressure was still there. The court proceedings weren't over, but the momentum had shifted. And with it, something in me began to shift too. I started volunteering at the church again, just one day a week. The same church whose steps held me the night my world collapsed. The pastor, a kind, balding man named Ezra, greeted me with quiet reverence. "Rachel, you're back? I don't know how useful I'll be." "Then be present. That's enough." Ezra wasn't a man of many words, but when he spoke, people listened. One Tuesday afternoon, while helping sort clothing donations, I found myself talking to a woman named Camille, mid-50s, newly widowed. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I lost everything when he died. Not just him. The income, the home, the life." I nodded. "I lost mine while he still lived," I said. "And that's a different kind of death." She cried. I cried with her. And in that moment, I realized something. Pain shared is pain halved. That night, I journaled for the first time in years. I wrote, "I am not broken. I am breaking free." 2 days later, Sylvia called again. "He's trying to drag this out. He's requesting an extension." I sighed. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I want to end it. I want peace more than revenge." She paused. "Then let's negotiate from strength." By mid-April, we offered a settlement. Not because I didn't think I could win more, but because I no longer needed to win. David responded through his lawyer with one demand. "She leaves the past alone." I agreed. And then he did something I didn't expect. He showed up at the church. I was folding bulletin sheets when Ezra gave me a look. "There's someone here to see you." I walked out, and there he was. David, older than I remembered. Or maybe just exposed. "I'm not here to argue," he said. I didn't expect you to come out of this stronger." I looked him in the eye. "You thought I'd fade?" He nodded. "You thought I was nothing without you." I did. "And now?" "You scare me," he whispered. I smiled, not cruelly, just truthfully. "You should be scared of what I'm becoming." He nodded, then added, "You once said God wouldn't let you fall too far." I mocked you. I regret that now. I turned toward the altar. "He still catches me," I said, "even now." David left quietly. I never saw him again. It was a Saturday in May when I got the call that changed everything again. Ruth had collapsed at the market. I rushed to the hospital, heart pounding, breath shallow. The hallway lights felt blinding. Every second dragged like a weight behind me. When I reached her room, she was pale, breathing heavily through an oxygen mask. The doctor pulled me aside. "She has late-stage heart failure. She's known for a while. Didn't want to worry you." My knees buckled. "She what?" "She declined treatment. Said she wanted to live, not just survive." I stumbled back into her room, tears streaming. She looked at me. eyes soft. "I didn't want to burden you," she whispered. "You're my sister," I said. "You carried me when no one else would." "You don't need me anymore," she said, smiling. "You've found your strength." "Don't say that." She squeezed my hand. "Rachel, listen to me. You were always the strong one. You just forgot." I sat beside her all night, holding her hand. Around 4 a.m., she looked toward the window and said something that still echoes in my heart. "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." And then she was gone. I screamed. I broke. I wept in a way I hadn't even allowed myself after the divorce. I called Jacob. I called Mia. I called Pastor Ezra. At her funeral, I spoke. She was my shield, I said. But she also reminded me that the only true shelter we have in this life is the one we build with faith. After that, something changed in me. I wasn't just healing from betrayal. Now, I was carrying Ruth's legacy. She believed in doing things with purpose. So I did. I started organizing support meetings at the church for women over 40. Those who had lost something, a spouse, a home, a dream. We met every Tuesday. Camille came back. So did Lexi's mother. Eventually, we had over a dozen women in a circle, candles lit, stories shared. We called it the Second Sunrise Circle because it wasn't too late to rise again. And one morning, while sweeping the church hallway, I found something. Tucked behind a stack of hymnals, barely visible, a red envelope. My hands trembled. It couldn't be. I opened it. Inside was a small handwritten note, not from David, but from Ruth. "You'll find your life again where you least expect it. And when you do, don't look back. Keep walking. I love you." I sat on the floor and sobbed. She must have placed it there during one of her volunteer shifts, knowing I'd find it one day. And I knew then, this was the new direction. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living. After Ruth's funeral, I moved permanently into her house. It felt like stepping into her heartbeat. Every object had meaning. Her teacups, her old quilt, the Bible with verses underlined in red ink. I made her room mine, but I left her books where they were, like she was still reading with me. The church group grew. We added Saturday morning walks and a shared journal that passed from hand to hand each week. Women began leaving notes in it, verses, dreams, small victories. One day, Camille wrote, "I laughed out loud this morning, first time since Tom died. Thank you, Rachel." I clutched the journal to my chest. My days began with sunrise and ended with candlelight. I started teaching adult literacy classes at the local library. Many of the women had gone their whole lives hiding the truth that they couldn't read. One woman, Margaret, 67, wept when she read her first sentence aloud. "I'm not stupid," she whispered. "No, sweetheart," I said. "You're a miracle." Meanwhile, Sylvia wrapped up the case. I received a modest settlement, enough to live simply. David didn't contest the final agreement. "Layla left him," Sylvia said as she handed me the papers. "Took everything she could." I didn't feel joy, just closure. "Did he say anything?" I asked. She paused. "Only this. Tell her I get it now." I nodded. That was enough. I donated the sapphire necklace to a shelter auction. It raised enough money to sponsor 3 women for 6 months. Jacob came back for my birthday. He brought Mia. She looked older, stronger. She hugged me for a long time. "I'm proud of you, Mom," I smiled. "I'm proud of us." That night, we lit candles and shared stories about Ruth. We laughed until we cried. And then, something unexpected happened. Jacob looked at me and said, "You should write this down. Your story. It could help someone." I laughed. But the next morning, I opened a notebook and began. Writing became my quiet rebellion. Every morning before dawn, I sat with my notebook and poured out the truth, raw, unfiltered, and sacred. Not just the story of David or Ruth, but the story of me, the girl who believed too easily, the woman who forgot her worth, the survivor who found her voice. Soon, word spread. Women started asking for copies of my pages. I printed them myself, stapled in small batches. The church library added a shelf titled Second Chances. One afternoon, Pastor Ezra approached me. "You should publish it." I shook my head. "I'm not a writer." "You are now," he said, "and this world needs your story more than you think." With his encouragement, I submitted a few chapters to a small publishing house. Weeks passed. I expected silence, but then the call came. "We'd like to publish your memoir, Rachel. It's powerful, redemptive, and deeply needed." I sat down on the floor and wept, not from sadness, from healing. The book launched 6 months later, from red envelopes to resurrection. One woman's walk through the fire. We held the first reading at the church. Over 200 people showed up. Many were women from the circle. Some were strangers. As I read aloud the section about Christmas Day, the envelope, the applause, the silence, I saw tears on faces I'd never met. Afterward, a woman approached me. Her name was Elena. "My husband left me after 38 years, she said. "I thought I was too old to start over, but now, maybe not." "You're never too old," I said. "You're still breathing. That means purpose is still calling." She hugged me, and something inside me said, "This is why you survived." The next months were a blur of speaking events, late-night writing sessions, and deep, quiet moments alone in Ruth's garden. I planted tulips in her memory. Every morning I whispered, "Thank you." Not just to her, but to God, for not letting me give up. One evening, as I closed the church after a Tuesday session, I noticed a man standing by the pews. He looked familiar. "Rachel," he said. It took me a second. It was Daniel, an old friend from college. We'd lost touch after marriage, careers, life. "I read your book," he said. "Didn't realize it was you until halfway through." We sat on the front steps of the church and talked for hours. He was divorced, 2 grown kids, quiet eyes, kind heart. We didn't make promises, but we met for coffee the next Saturday, and the next, and the next. For the first time in years, I laughed without caution. One morning, as we walked through the market, he reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. Healing isn't a destination, it's a road. And now, I wasn't walking it alone. As summer turned to fall, I found myself standing more firmly in my own life. The memoir had sold beyond expectations. Not a bestseller, but something more meaningful. It was a lifeline passed from woman to woman. Book clubs formed, letters poured in, some handwritten, some emailed, all of them personal. I left after reading your story. "You gave me courage." My daughter read it. Now she understands why I stayed so long. Each word was a thread, stitching back the pieces of my heart. Daniel became a quiet constant. He never tried to replace what I'd lost. He simply listened, showed up, and let me be. One evening, he brought over an old briefcase filled with investment documents. "I know you're cautious with money now," he said, "but I want to teach you how to protect what's yours. Not because I think you'll lose it, but because I want you to always feel in control." We spent weekends going through everything: stocks, bonds, saving strategies. It was the first time I truly understood how money worked and how David had used that knowledge to keep me blind. I cried during one of our sessions. Daniel placed his hand over mine and said, "Never again." The Tuesday circle grew so large, we had to move it to the community center. We added childcare, job prep, financial literacy, and even a small emergency fund for women leaving dangerous situations. What started as survival had become service. Still, a part of me felt unfinished. I hadn't returned to the house, the one David and I shared, not even once. Sylvia had arranged for everything to be handled. I let it be sold, but I never stepped back inside. Until one day, I received a letter from his mother. Yes, her. It was short. "I was wrong. I judged you unfairly. I see it now. I hope one day you'll forgive us. Or at least forgive yourself for not fighting harder. You were the only good thing he ever had." I read it twice, then I burned it. Forgiveness wasn't something she could demand with a few lines on a page, but it reminded me there was one last thing to face. The red envelope, I had kept it, folded, taped shut, at the back of my Bible. I opened it again for the first time since Christmas. And I realized something. It wasn't just a document. It was the final lie. The real truth? I was never the one being discarded. I was the one being set free. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon when I stood in front of the old house, the one I once called home. I had avoided it for nearly a year, but something inside told me it was time, not to reclaim it, but to release it fully. I had arranged a final walkthrough with the realtor. The new owners would be moving in the next day. As I stepped through the front door, I felt a sharp wave of emotion, like walking into a dream I didn't recognize anymore. The furniture was gone, but I could still hear the echoes. The sound of children's laughter in the hallway, the scent of roasted chicken from 100 Sunday dinners, my voice calling his name, the silence that eventually answered. I walked from room to room, the master bedroom, where he once handed me the first loan document and said, "Just sign it, it's nothing." The kitchen, where I had stirred soup through tears I never let fall. The living room, where the Christmas tree stood the day he handed me the red envelope. It was all empty now, and yet I wasn't. I knelt in the center of the floor, laid my hand on the wood and whispered, "Thank you for the memories and the lessons, but you don't own me anymore." Then I stood, pulled out a small oil vial from my coat pocket, and anointed the threshold. In this house, I was betrayed. But here, I also found my God again. And I repeated softly, "Behold, I make all things new." As I turned to leave, the realtor stepped in. "Rachel," she asked, "there's someone outside asking for you." My heart skipped. I stepped onto the porch and saw Daniel, soaked from the rain, holding a folded umbrella. "I didn't know you'd be here," he said, sheepish. "I was just driving past." I smiled. "That's not the truth." He laughed. "No, it's not. I wanted to be with you, in case it hurt too much." I walked down the steps, took his hand. It did hurt, but it didn't break me. We stood in the rain for a long time. No umbrella, no hiding. Then I said, "Let's go home." And we did. Not to his place, not to Ruth's house, but to the new one we picked out together. Small, quiet, full of light, where healing was still happening, but so was love. It's been 2 years now. I still wake up early, still light a candle for Ruth every Sunday, still walk past the church garden and whisper, "Thanks." Daniel and I didn't rush. We took our time. He built a bench in the backyard where I sit with my coffee each morning. Sometimes he joins me, sometimes he lets me be. We're not trying to recreate youth. We're honoring what's left and making it beautiful. The Tuesday Circle became something bigger than I ever imagined. We registered it as a nonprofit. We now offer small grants to women starting over. First month rent, grocery stipends, therapy sessions. We call them Ruth Gifts. Every month, we read one story aloud and light a candle for the woman brave enough to start again. Camille now leads her own group in another city. Margaret volunteers as a literacy coach. Lexi, yes, the little girl who drew me that red envelope, is now a teenager, and last week she told me, I want to help women like you. I told her, then help women like you. And as for me, I still write. Not books, necessarily, but stories, letters, testimonies. Some end up on websites. Some get tucked into Bibles at the church. Others I send to women whose names I'll never know, but whose pain I remember intimately. I keep that first red envelope in my desk, not as a scar, but as a reminder that sometimes the moment you think is meant to destroy you is the very one that saves you. Because if he hadn't handed me those papers, if his family hadn't clapped, I might never have walked into the cold. I might never have heard God whisper, "Be still." I might never have rediscovered the fire inside me. And I certainly wouldn't be here today, not just surviving, but rising.